pass the soda, pass the salt, and with one hand under the table and one hand on the table. So you looked like you were a gentleman. And he loved that school. And he finished the school, he graduated, and they put him into the Air Force School, where he learned to be he wanted to be a navigator, but they didn't pick him as a navigator, so they made him what did they make him?
Uncle Max you're talking about?
This is Uncle Max.
Mm-hmm.
They made him not a navigator, no.
Pilot?
Not a pilot. He wanted to be a pilot. Oh, something else. I can't remember what. Isn't that awful? Anyhow, they made him, but he was very happy to be in the Air Force, and he went to school, and they used to go out on airplane missions to learn how to control yourself and how to bear up under severe conditions. And they sent them out one night on a midnight tour, and it was very dark. And the young man that was running the airplane, he was 18 years old. He didn't know too much. He was navigating the plane, which he thought was in the right position, but it was wrong. And he was flying at a level, and they said, watch, you're going into a mountain. But it was too late, and he hit the mountain.
Mm.
And the plane fell down and started to burn. And they had to rescue all the people, the students from the plane. So my brother grabbed one young man out, and another one was grabbed out. But the plane was burning, and they couldn't stay there. So all in all, I think they had about, I don't remember how many Air Force men were in there, but only 4 were saved. One of them was my brother. But
Wow.
They were in the mountains for days, and nobody knew where they were. And they didn't have any way to signal where they were. So they would start a fire to burn so that you could see them at night. And then finally, 2 of the boys decided they would walk down the mountain and see what they would come to, because they couldn't stay on the mountain. It was freezing. And they were freezing, and they took the parachutes, covered themselves with the parachute. And so the 2 boys went down the mountain, and they came to some kind of it was some kind of a faraway cabin. But luckily, when they entered, it had a phone. So they told the owner there what to do. He called in, and he told them about the boys on the mountain needed to be rescued. They were freezing. They didn't have anything to eat. So they called some mission out, and they went up the mountain, and they rescued these boys. My brother had a big star, V on his forehead, and they all said, "That's V for victory." That was what they used to say then, V for victory. Meanwhile, they sent my mother a telegram saying, "Your son missing."
Aye.
That's what he was. He was missing. And so she got hysterical.
Yeah, they shouldn't do that.
I started crying. We all were crying. The whole street was crying because everybody knew my brother since he was born there. So
They shouldn't do it like that.
They were all crying. Ugh, it's terrible.
So how long was he missing to you? And then you found out he was...
Well, when they took him down from the mountain, they put him in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they called my mother to tell her they had found him and he's in the hospital. But it was very shocking, really.
That's a relief.
It was very shocking. Everybody in the street was crying. And
For how many days?
He was up there, I think, almost 3 days.
Wow.
But with no food and no heat, no water, no nothing. But you know what? I took, who was it that time? I think Vivian. I took Vivian and I ran down to my mother to be with her. It was terrible, I remember, awful. And we sat there until a couple days later they told us that he was in the hospital. And then he called my mother to talk to her so she should know. And that was one of, when he was much later in life, much later, he got in touch with the people who rescued him. And the plane is still there. And he was going to go up with Stevie to see the plane. It was up the mountain. He couldn't make it because he was already sick. And, you know, he could have lived with what he had. But he didn't. He was very immaculate. He was so, he would go in the bathroom for hours. We couldn't go to the toilet because he was in the bathroom all the time. He washed himself, cleaned himself, shaved himself. Anyhow, he was supposed to go up the mountain. They were going to have what do you call it? Some kind of memorial service up there. Because it was a few years already. They wanted to celebrate. He never made it up there. He wanted to go. But what he had, I don't know what they call it, where he had to urinate in through a pipe or something, you know. I don't
Catheter?
Yeah, through a
Catheter, yeah. He had to wear the catheter,
Mm-hmm.
and he wouldn't wear that. And he came to a doctor, and the doctor said, well, Max, I see, he always looked so young, my brother. He didn't even look his age. He had his hair, and he was a handsome man. But anyhow, the doctor said, well, Max, what have you decided? And Max said, I decided that I don't want the operation. So he lived until he couldn't live any longer. It was really terrible. And he could have lived. There's a lot of people living like that. But he didn't want to live.